Gentlemen, you are listening and watching the Gird Up Podcast. This is where young men learn how to be the men that God created them to be. This is the BroCast. So we got some bros here. We got Ezra Blumer. What's up, Ezra?
How's it going, Charlie?
It's going great, man. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
How's life, man?
It's been busy, School's really kicking me in the rear end, but trying my best to just get everything done and things while maintaining somewhat of a social life.
At some point, we might have Gustav join us. We'll see. You all know who Gustav is. And in chair number 3, go ahead and introduce yourself, brother.
Hey, I'm Zach Bloomquist. A little loud.
That's okay. That's okay. I got you. Who are you, Zach? What do you do? What are you preparing for?
Senior at Martin Luther College, elementary education, coaching minor. So
Nice.
that's what we're going with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
YMLC.
YMLC. At first, I really didn't know about MLC, to be honest. I mean, I know a lot of people say that, but just the experience.
Well, I straight up came here for the football.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's another great reason, too. But the ministry as well, obviously. Both my parents are heavily involved with it. And so just something that I've just been always in my life. So, and influences not just my parents, but teachers in general I've had. And so just like role models, basically.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. What are you looking forward to?
Well, probably one. I'm getting married this summer. So
Hey,
that's number one thing.
That's
yeah.
huge.
Give her a shout out quick. Win some brownie points.
Yeah, exactly. And then getting a call in May is going to be pretty exciting. That's probably a month away. So that'll be very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, the really exciting part is, well, the nervous part is the meeting before the call service where they tell you if you're getting a call or not.
Yep.
And then once you know you're getting a call, then the rest of it goes okay. Then it's just, all right, let's wait and see what's going on.
Charlie, didn't you almost not get a call?
So I almost failed student teaching, but I didn't. I passed just barely by the skin of my teeth.
Matters,
yep.
yeah.
But then I failed my portfolio presentation twice, and I got less than 1 point on my Ed TPA. But Ed TPA, you can't technically fail as long as you complete it.
Yep. I'll give you props, for a portfolio.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
I'll give you props
Failing
for
it
that.
twice.
Yeah.
The first time, it's a long story, but the first time I took a nap because I wanted to be fresh, and slept in. So I showed up like 25 minutes late, and then had a bunch of artifacts in the wrong places, and I also there was some shady business going on, and then I was told I was using an inappropriate conversational tone. So make sure you don't use an inappropriate conversational tone.
I passed my portfolio already,
Oh,
so
okay, there you go.
I'm in the clear.
First time?
The second time,
Yeah, first time.
The second time I knocked it out of the park, but there was there were two. I had all the right artifacts, but 2 of them were switched. They're even labeled correctly. They were just switched in order in the binder. They're like, technically it's a fail. And then they passed me anyway. Actually, before I went down there to give because the second time I had to do it in the basement of the library, and the board of presidents or whatever they're called was already meeting, and the district president. So I was a inner city guy. So, everybody kind of knew if I was going to get a call, that's what I was doing. And the President Rachow, who eventually was my district president, came up to me before I gave my presentation and said, I heard you're struggling to pass that portfolio. And I said, yeah. He said, have you done it the second time yet? I was like, well, I'm about to go do it right now. He said, you'll pass. And I was like, yeah, you think so? He winked at me. He's like, no, you'll pass. I was like, oh, okay. All right, we're going to be all right.
Yep.
We're going to be all right. So, yeah, I don't advise blowing off the only thing. There's only 3 things you have to do to graduate. I don't advise blowing those off.
Yep.
I did try really hard in student teaching. I was at St. Marcus, so it was a tough spot. But the other 2 things, there's no good reason why I just blew them off. Yeah. But you already passed them, so
Yeah, I'm all good. So
don't come to me for pointers.
Nope.
On any of that. I can give you teaching pointers, but not anything. I don't even know if I can give you those. But it took me a while to man up and actually
To gird up?
there you go. Yeah, it took me a while to gird up. There's a reason this show had to start.
Yeah. Exactly.
Speaking of which, before we get started with our topic today, we got to shout out Brigadier General Beard Oils and Supplements. Nobody likes flakes in their beard. It's not sexy. And the reason you're growing that beard is to look sexy in the first place, right? So you got to take good care of your facial hair. We got all kinds of, flavors, scents here. Deep in the Woods is my favorite. You got to try that one. Deep in the Woods is my favorite. You just take a little dab, and you just a little dab in your hand, and you rub it in. What it's going to do, basically, is just condition it and keep all the... Because when you shampoo your beard, all the oils and things come out of it. So you got to put all those back in. It smells great, dude. It smells awesome.
Too bad I just shaved not that long ago.
Yeah, man. Yep. So if you want to find... You see... It's just too good, man. I put it
in the hair too, huh?
Oh yeah, all over the place. So if you're looking for a good beard oil, find Brigadier General at sites.google.com/Brigadier General, or find him on Facebook. And huge shout out to Nate Hensler. He's got all kinds of exciting things happening in his life, so go follow him on Instagram and Facebook and stuff. He's got all kinds of excitement going on. He's a great dude, good friend of the show. So thanks Nate for the beard oil. Go check it out. Today's topic is toughness. Toughness. So there's a whole like 18 levels of conversation we could have here.
Yep.
I think maybe the best place to start is defining toughness. What is toughness? What is toughness? What does it mean to be tough?
I think there's a couple of different types of toughness, I should say, first of all. Like there's the mental toughness, physical toughness, spiritual toughness. So I guess just branching like what kind of toughness you're kind of characterizing first. So
well, what's the difference between them all?
Well, mental toughness is you're working through something like cognitively. Physical is something like a pain that you have. Spiritually, it could be like getting through a hardship that you have, or something that you're struggling with.
Almost more resilience.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas physical toughness, you can just be like a dumb, brutish animal and you make it through, right? There doesn't have to be a whole lot of cognitive activity going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the common thread through like what you just stated was the fact that toughness is like facing adversity or like something in your way, and then having to either, challenge that wall, you take a step back, or you try to get over it, And so I think when I see and like think about toughness in my life, it's a wall or a challenge that I see that I have to try to get across, whether in all those areas, So, yeah.
Yeah, I think toughness is one of those things that a lot of times ends up on the toxic masculinity list.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do we end up throwing it? Well, not us, but why does it get tossed into the toxic masculinity basket?
Well, if you're not tough, you're obviously weak then, and then people might think that because you're not tough, then you're not strong in any type of way. And then that makes you almost like a female, because females are seen as not strong.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Can you be a man if you're not tough?
Oh, you totally can be, yeah.
All right. You want to explain?
I, again, don't really know where I was going with that, but...
I don't know. What do you think, Ezra?
I think there's definitely different forms of toughness, and it manifests itself in different ways. I think... of my dad, who's maybe, it looks like we have an interruption.
Yeah, come on in, man.
Oh, yeah, toughness manifests itself in different ways.
Yeah.
So, like, I think, some people just try to bottle it up and do it on their own. And that's, like, I think my grandpa's generation of, like, what toughness is and stuff. And, you think of your classical farmer, like, I'm just going to get this done by myself and not invite anybody else into it. And, that can be super helpful, but I think also toughness can also be going to those around you and telling them, hey, I'm not okay in this moment, or I need help. Think of like a sports team. Like you're with a bunch of people overcoming something, adversity and things. And so that's another way toughness manifests itself. And then I think like just overall in the guys realm of things, like typically we don't want to be tough in a way where we share. And so, I've seen that in my own life I don't generally like telling other people I'm struggling with something, because I view toughness, I think sometimes in a toxic way of me just taking on my problems and then putting my head down, getting through them without asking for any help ever. So,
yeah. Can you be vulnerable and tough at the same time?
I would say so.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
How does that happen? Like what? How does that look? So if you can be vulnerable and tough at the same time, then I think our definition of toughness might need to change a little bit. So why is that valuable?
You're good. I think because then it actually like reveals like how you're feeling, because then it opens you up more, and then just because you open up more doesn't mean you're like soft or anything by any means, but it's just also showing like a different side of you that maybe a lot of people don't see.
Absolutely. So. Hey, Gus.
Hey, I'm Gus, by the way. I don't know that.
I'm Zach Bloomquist.
Zach Bloomquist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Geared Up
Cool.
podcast brings people together.
That's right.
Cool.
Bringing people together in real life, real time.
I've never sat in this spot before.
Well,
weird.
yeah, who's usually on the end. You don't have
Yeah.
anything to lean on
I
now.
just got my
You want
spot.
to trade?
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
What do you think? What is toughness?
What is toughness? Like,
What does it mean to be tough?
when I think, what's it mean to be tough? A lot of it, I think, in my mind, isn't necessarily physical strength. It's more of a mental strength. Because I think if you're mentally strong, generally people who are mentally strong can overcome physical barriers, if that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Being able to handle high-pressure situations that take more than just, punching through it, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and we kind of touched on that too. The idea that physical toughness doesn't always necessarily take a whole lot of like mental fortitude. It certainly might in certain cases, but you say the mental and spiritual, even emotional toughness definitely has a higher value.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a connection between physical toughness and like emotional, spiritual, mental toughness?
I think some of like the most godly people that I know in my life are like tough all around, and like that doesn't mean that they're not vulnerable or it's this like toxic way of doing it, but they know where to go to in moments where they know what they need to do in order to overcome an obstacle. And I think that's like the key of like being tough, is like knowing where to go in moments where you're facing an obstacle, whether that be a coach, whether that be a teammate, whether that be your brother or your parents or your significant other. Knowing where to go to help overcome, or what resources you have at your disposal to help you overcome that. And so that may be finding a different level within yourself to overcome like a spiritual thing, or overcoming your pride to reach out to God or fall on your knees before him and be like, hey, I can't do this on my own anymore, or a pastor or somebody. So using those resources that God has put at your disposal to overcome your obstacle, I think it is measure of a true person who is tough all around.
Yeah, I like that. And kind of leaning into that measure of a tough person. What do you look like if you're looking at somebody and thinking like, man, that guy's tough? What is it usually that you're noticing, you think, that makes you say like, hey, that's a tough dude?
I think he's very secure in who he is.
Okay. You want to explain that a little bit?
He knows who he is. He's confident in who he is, and that's not like a cocky thing, but he knows what's his identity, rather than just putting on this show that he's something that he's not. And so I think of the tough people that I know in my life, like they're confident in who they are. They know exactly where to turn to in every single moment. And so I think that is like what I think of when I think of a tough person.
All right. What do you think?
I mean, obviously, from toughness, because playing football, I always would think, well, if this guy has a bunch of bumps and bruises and stuff, he's obviously tough.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, he could be one of the weaker people mentally, no matter what.
Yeah.
So I think it all honestly comes back to the mental toughness, because I know that's something that's always been harped on in my life, is being mentally tough. Because if you're mentally tough, then you can take on any challenge.
Yeah.
So whether that's earthly, spiritually, whatever it might be.
14 shoulder surgeries, whatever that might be.
Only two. Let's not jinx it. I don't need another one.
Yeah. What do you think, Gus? What makes a guy tough?
Well, I mean, it's almost the same as the last question, really.
Yeah.
It's the ability to be a guy. Okay, a tough guy is someone who can take, like, physical things, kind of like what he's saying, like with the bruises. Like, you see a guy who's got a bunch of bruises, but he keeps going. Like, yeah, that, like, you can be like, wow, that dude's physically tough, but it's the mindset behind that physical toughness that he has.
Yeah.
The stuff that you have going on in your mind, and the stuff that you have, I mean, potentially going on spiritually as well, is really what determines how long or how well you can take the kind of physical outward influences that, like, you have to actually be strong for.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I think about toughness, I think about the guys who just keep showing up,
Mm-hmm.
Like even though when you start to question, like, why are you here? And they just keep showing up and showing up. And whether that's, I think about my grandpa is a small business owner, I remember and he even will talk about, maybe have putting too much of himself into the business,
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of like I remember as a kid, we would be visiting grandma and grandpa, and he'd get a phone call, and we'd go over to the shop at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and he'd be rummaging around looking for a part for a customer or something like that. Like it'd be really easy to just say, "Sorry, man, come in the morning." But you're saying, "I got a responsibility to my customers. This is what I do." Like that's tough to me,
Yeah.
I think about a couple of pastors that I've known pretty well, or even a couple of cops that I've known pretty well, where they just things keep going wrong, things suck, life isn't good, and they just keep showing up and showing up and showing up. Like those are. I think that's part of what, if in my mind, defines that toughness is it's not even necessarily – the bounce back is great, but the ability to bounce back and keep showing up. There's a lot of people that things happen in their lives and they just stop showing up.
Mm-hmm.
They're still there. They're still walking the earth and they don't show up anymore. And I think that's a big – maybe that mental fortitude to be able to keep showing up over and over again no matter what happens. Well, actually, it's making me think about, so that poem, you can't really see it on the camera, I know, because it's too shiny, but Rudyard Kipling's If poem. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, and it just goes on for, I'm not going to, it takes like 2 minutes to recite the whole thing. I do have it memorized, though, and I show it off all the time.
If only your Greek was memorized.
I know. Hey, I'm guilty, man. But no, I usually know my vocab. But like that idea of no matter what obstacle, this is kind of what you guys said too, that obstacle that comes, it's not even about the obstacle. It's about just keeping moving. It's not even about winning every time, just moving.
And something to think about too is it's like a lot of times toughness is specifically associated with the just keeping on, right? Mm-hmm. But when it comes down to mental or spiritual toughness, that also is the knowledge of when to stop.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
And realize when you need to maybe back up.
Well, and I think Ezra was hitting
or
on
back
that too.
off even.
The idea of I don't want to look weak. Sometimes just the toughness to just, it is tough to swallow your pride a little bit and be like, all right, this is the moment to be vulnerable. This is the moment to take a step back and be embarrassed. Like, I totally failed this one,
Yeah, I think one of like the smartest dudes that I know in my life, when I think of like a guy, one of my basketball coaches in high school said, a true measure of somebody who's tough is somebody who sees what needs to be done and gets it done. And that can take so many different like forms and things. And so that what may need to get done is that people need to stop, and you need to stop and evaluate. And that like a good tough dude will see that and stop and understand that that's what needs to be done in that moment. In the same way, if it's pushed through, like he'll encourage those, he'll bring those around him. Like, let's push through because we know what's on the other side.
Well, and in that stopping moment, it's being able to take that ridicule. Right?
Yeah, 100%,
because a lot of people are going to see that and be like, dude, why are you stopping?
Well, I don't even know if it's a stopping thing. I think it might even be like just looking at it from a long perspective, from a long-term perspective,
Right, but it looks to others, though.
Right, no, absolutely. Just the idea of like playing the long game.
Yeah,
and
like you're not. You're not stopping.
Recognizing or even deciding what's important and saying I'm going to cut this out because of that. It's facing that discipline, but thinking about the long game and, like I said, continuing to show up and continuing to fight that battle time after time after time. I think it's you said in that moment. I think it's in those consecutive moments, right?
Yeah.
Like moment after moment, no matter what moment comes,
building on top of each other.
I
think of like a basketball analogy. Like, so I was the manager at the U of M last year for the guys' basketball team, and one thing Coach Patino would always say is like, we have to get stop after stop. It needs to build upon each other, right? And I think that's what true toughness is. Like, he would use toughness in that situation, that we need to be a mentally tough team to be able to get stop after, and our goal was to get 5 stops in a row, and that would count as one. And if we could get 3 stops like that in a 10-minute span, he'd say if we got at least half of those, we'd win the game, basically. And so I think in life we got to consecutively get those moments where we're tough. We're stringing together those mentally tough moments and pushing through and stuff. If we see life in that way, I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, and continuing on that theme, I got to spend some time with Buzz Williams.
Yeah.
And that was his thing. He always says that during practice. We're gonna out tough our opponent. We're gonna out tough our opponent over and over and over again. Right?
It's bourbon.
Oh yeah, the good stuff. And then, as the game goes on, you can see it as they play. Like, you think about the Marquette teams that they've had, and especially, what's his name with the Heat?
Dwayne Wade.
Jimmy
No,
Butler.
Jimmy Butler.
Yep.
And they made it to the Final Four. They were not the most talented team in the tournament. They had no business being in the Final Four. They out-toughed their opponents.
Yeah.
And they eventually ran out of steam. But
That usually happens with teams that go that deep.
right,
though.
exactly. Exactly. Or Kentucky, I think it was the year that they lost to Tyler Hansbrough. I think they lost to North Carolina or whoever it was. The same thing, though.
Yeah.
Just, like, ran other teams into the ground. That toughness from whistle to the buzzer, like just going and going and going over and over again. And he built that in practice then, right? So they would, like, I can't tell you how many times, like, there's no mistake that goes unaddressed. What?
Mitchers?
Yeah, it's the good stuff. Yeah, it's the bro whiskey.
We're having a tough conversation with
That's right.
tough alcohol.
Yeah. But so he would do that in practice, and they would they'd make a mistake, and he'd say, "All right, we're going back to the beginning," and he would start practice over from the beginning, and he would go through all their fundamental drills. And now that you're doubly exhausted from doing all your fundamental drills again, now you go back into the drill that you screwed up on. Who's the coach at West Virginia?
Bob Huggins.
Yeah, Huggins does the same thing. Huggins has a row of treadmills on the side of the court. And if you mess up during practice, you go jump on a treadmill, and I think you run it. Pretty sure it was 7 miles an hour for 7 seconds, or something like that. And so you just outright sprint on the treadmill, and then you go right back into the drill. So they don't sub you out. If it's 5-on-5, they're now playing 4-on-5 until you're done running on the treadmill, and you jump back in. So the idea of like now you're far beyond fight or flight mode physically. Like you can't breathe. Can you still be composed after you make a mistake and move forward? Like that's toughness right there.
That's got to be 17 miles per hour, not 7.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I could probably walk at that pace.
I don't know.
Like
But it's an all-out sprint, and off they go, right?
Sure.
I had that happen one time freshman year basketball. We
Yeah.
started the entire practice.
Yeah. Dude, we sat in on probably 10 or 15 practices, and I saw him do it 7 or 8 times. And it's crazy to see, 7-footers that are about to get drafted, and little Buzz Williams is standing in the middle of the court going, "Start it again!" And then they all jump in, and literally start over. And he expects perfection from them every time. So it's not like you start over and go through the motions, and you have to earn the right to practice again. And just seeing him do that over and over again, and then seeing the guys rally, because you immediately know who's tough then, because those are the guys who are coaching each other on, urging each other on, and you also immediately know who the weak guys are, because they're groaning and moaning, they've got bad posture, and they're being lazy, and they're running out of breath, and all that kind of stuff. And Buzz's big thing is bounce backs from JUCO, right?
Yeah.
So he's always got these guys coming in who've messed something up somewhere along the way, and a lot of times those attitudes show up in those moments. He said, "Nope, we're going to be tough. We're going to be tougher than everybody else."
I think one of the cool things about getting into a coach's psyche like that is, what are they trying to do in that moment? I think it's build habits and stuff. And so maybe like a question that I would have for the group is like, how do we build habits of toughness as Christian dudes? For our listeners, how people can grow up as you're developing as a young man, and think about how do I develop better and better habits to build good, manly toughness, Christian toughness.
Well, I think the cliches immediately come to mind. Like Wisco, when they're building culture, they just kill the first Lord, second team thing over and over and over again, right? So, but then as soon as somebody's doing something stupid, what's the first words out of a teammate's mouth? Might be some choice words first.
Yeah.
But eventually somebody's going to say, like, first Lord, second team, man, like, get it right.
Yeah.
Or I don't remember who said it. I think it might have been one of those Navy SEAL books that was super popular like 4 or 5 years ago, because every good Lutheran pastor and every good Navy SEAL has to write a book. He said you're never going to rise to in stressful situations. You don't rise to the level of your ideal. You will fall to your highest level of expertise. So you can want to do the right thing. You can want to be good at something under pressure. You can want it as much as you want. But in that moment of crisis, in that moment where the lights are on or whatever happens, in that moment where crap hits the fan, you're going to fall to your highest level of expertise. If you really haven't mastered it, you're not going to do it. Mm-hmm. You think about guys shooting free throws, right? You can every once in a while you're going to pop in 7 or 8 free throws out of 10. Doesn't mean you're going to make them in a game. You got to be consistent over time.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing is true, especially on the football field. Like think about all the plays and all the footwork and all that kind of stuff. You're not if you if you just like look at a playbook and say, "Yep, I think I got it,"
Yeah.
you're not ready.
Yeah, for football, I've had the same playbook since I was in 7th grade. And I still, sophomore year in college, still was messing up. Just general footwork stuff.
Yep.
And I've had it for probably 8, 9, 10 years. So that just shows.
Yeah. What do you guys think? How do we build that toughness?
For football?
Oh, no, in general.
Go
back to Ezra's question.
How do you... Okay, so before you end up in those situations, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, kind of your whole thing, like what your shirts say and stuff, you know?
By the way, they're all on sale now. You can get them $17. Go online, get a shirt.
Because, like, at some point, like, we really shouldn't have to ask the question, how do we build the toughness? Because if we're asking that question, at some point, the men in our lives or the men before them, something went wrong. In a way. Okay, I'm not saying you can't bring back the toughness, and that's not necessarily to bash on our forefathers and stuff like that, but if we're wondering how do we become tougher, then that's something that wasn't taught us, right? So all we have to look on at our point is, I mean, either we go and we find individuals that we think are tougher, and we say, hey, like, how did you become the way you are? I want to learn from you. Or we can, go to the ultimate source, the Bible, and see what God says, and try and learn from God's way of toughness rather than the world's way of toughness, right?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ways to talk about the Old Testament. Is the Old Testament is just a whole bunch of stories about guys that didn't get it right, and God used them anyway.
Yeah,
right,
100%.
Yeah, if you want to learn how,
if
you want to learn how to be tough, like King David, you just read about King David,
Gideon, Samson,
all of them. Yeah.
I mean, think about Samson. Job is an obvious one, and you can't.
No, that's 100% number one. Yeah.
Number one.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I had a buddy, Vince Husek, which is an awesome episode or a bunch of episodes. If you go like 3 years back, those are some of my favorite episodes that I've ever done. But a friend of mine who had leukemia. Yeah, I didn't know you yet. You were still in like high school or something. I don't know.
3 years ago? No.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, you're doing college the first time.
Yeah, I was doing college the first time 3 years ago.
Anyway, so he was going through leukemia, and he said right after his leukemia diagnosis, that's what he did. He sat down, and he read Job, and just was feeling the same feelings that Job was feeling all the way through. He said it didn't make it any easier. Didn't even like reconcile it. It's not like he finished Job and was like, "Okay, God, I understand now." But he got to the end, and like that's where the toughness came from, saying like, "All right, I'm gonna trust. This is the Lord's plan for me. Whatever it is, let's knock it out. Let's do it and keep going."
I think also like understanding that the Lord's going to put you in tough situations. There are going to be situations you just naturally find yourself in life. Like, yes, you can avoid some of those by becoming more wise as you get older and things, but you're just naturally going to find yourself in situations where you're going to be faced with tough decisions and things. And I think being able to take a step back after you go through something, or even the moment, and understand and kind of dissect what you're really feeling, learn from the tough situations that you get placed in, because you get so much and gain so much wisdom through actually experiencing those situations for yourself. Like my entire situation at the U of M was so much of me just taking, a situation where I screwed up constantly, made bad decisions, and again and again, I had to take a step back and actually learn from them. And it's made it this year. I'm excited for my ministry. Like it's going to make it so much easier, because instead of just taking those tough situations I found myself in and just letting them like stay in the past, like I also understood like, hey, there's stuff to learn from them, and it's going to make me a better person because of the fact I did go through that. So
absolutely,
you have to take what you're learning and what God's teaching you, and take it through those tough times, So
yeah, I've talked about this a whole bunch, but he's dead. He's dead right. Professor David Scharf does a talk all the time where he talks about the idea that the most powerful prayer, the most important prayer a Christian can pray isn't, Lord, give me an easy life. It's, Lord, send whatever you need to send into my life so that I stay faithful to you until the end. Like if my life must be awful, if I have to live a miserable life in order that my salvation be secure, like send a storm. Do what you got to do. And I think recognizing that I'm a broken and sinful human being, and there are the consequences for my sin are a curse, but they're also a tool that the Lord is actively using to bring me ever closer to Him.
Yeah.
And continually make my faith more secure. And when I recognize that, I don't even want to live an easy life, you know? Like, I embrace that toughness. I look for that toughness.
Yeah.
I do hard things so that I get tougher.
Yeah.
So that, again, that faith might be made secure.
I mean, look at how many disciples lived easy lives. Like, the Lord interrupts
None.
their lives, and, like, literally all of them are crucified, you know, go through the worst.
I was checking to make sure that
You just leave that in,
We
man.
definitely have to cut that.
This is
We're
the
good.
real world.
Yeah.
This is what the real world's like.
This is what podcasting really looks like.
See, now
It's
if
not
Charlie
so
starts
glamorous.
crying, we know he's not tough. Did you guys talk about how crying is tough? Because, I don't know. Maybe. Sometimes it is.
recording, though, so we're doing great.
Bingo.
Picture's really good. Oops, now I can see everybody's feet.
Dude, I got my teepee creepers on. That's probably... You don't... I
I
mean...
was wearing my Sperry, like white Sperry's today with my pants rolled up just a little bit.
Yeah.
And some 8th graders told me I look fruity.
Oh, dude.
Well,
You're looking
if that's
fruity,
the
huh?
case, if that's the case, then I'm
Well, it's Friday. You
I'm
always look
secure
fruity
enough.
on Friday.
I'm secure enough
You're
in
tough
my
enough.
in my
Masculinity.
manhood that I'm all right with looking fruity. I'm all right looking fruity.
That's a lesson.
We watched a PragerU video today called "Why Girls Become Boys." And,
Because we have better clothes.
that's right. Oh no, but it was like a real conversation about.
Oh, okay.
It was good.
So
It
you're
was
saying
good.
my conversation
They also
wasn't
got
real?
we just watched like a clip from the news talking about COVID passports,
Oh, yeah.
and they got into a hot debate on COVID
Really?
passports.
Which news?
Well, they're just talking about DeSantis and
Right, but
and all
Fox,
stuff going on.
CNN? Because it's
CNN
biased.
10.
Okay.
So it's the kids one, so it's not as biased. It
It's-
definitely came from a
Like
liberal
CNN 10?
standpoint.
CNN
Or-
for
yeah.
10-year-olds.
It's called CNN 10. It's 10-minute
Yeah,
clips
yeah,
for
yeah.
teenagers,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
and it's definitely liberal.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
Absolutely.
I also show them a lot of liberal news stuff, and then we talk about like
Whites.
sometimes, and then sometimes and then I always make sure when they do tell the truth that we point that out and say, okay, that was honest.
Word.
You know, that really is what happened. Or like, here's the shred of truth that's here. You know, here's why. And I think it's taken root.
And so that's kind of almost a lesson in and of itself of how toughness can be like a blind, like they're just going forward saying sometimes truth, but a lot of the times just BS, you know? And in their mind, they're probably like, we're just being tough. We're pushing their thing. But to us, it's like, why stop?
Yeah.
You know, like, what are you doing? It's not making you look good. It's not making you look tough at all.
Yeah.
It's making you look bad.
Well, and I
quite
think
honestly.
that goes back to the toxic masculinity conversation, right?
Sure.
And maybe not directly, but that's
was
where
I here for that? No, I wasn't.
I don't know. The reason toughness a lot of times ends up on that list of like, you boys have to be tough all the time. It's like, well, they should be. That's how God created them. That's the role they've been put in. But when you separate gender or any of those things from the natural order that God has created, like C.S. Lewis calls it the Tao. Well, the Chinese call it the Tao, and C.S. Lewis uses that in Mere Christianity, a couple of those writings. You know, talking about this is the natural order of the world. You can't go more basic than that without just tearing morality out of the structure of the universe. But when we do that, now there's nothing to be based in. You can't be tough because there is no moral right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And good.
And it's kind of funny thinking about this. It's like a friend of mine back home in Montana posted something on her Snapchat earlier, and I'm sure you guys have all seen something like this, where it's boys do this, men do this.
Oh,
you know, one of those kind of things. And it was like a 25 point, like, you know, it was like, boys, you know, I can't even come up with one. It was just like,
Boys wear green shirts.
No, it was like boys lust after women, men, like,
Respect them.
sure,
Yeah.
something like that,
Right.
along those lines. And which is inherently, like, that's a good thing. Like, yes, that is true. Men do that. And boys also do that.
Right.
But the thing is it's like personally knowing who that was that posted that, I'm like, okay, you're right, but how often do you really let a guy be that man that you want them to be? You know what I mean? Because of the environment that they're growing up in, they're just...
You're also invalidating the dude's manhood, too. Like, when he makes a mistake, then is he not a man because he made a mistake?
Sure,
Like, I'm going to mess a bunch of stuff up. And does that mean that I'm not a man? Like, I think that's where the toughness actually comes in,
Yeah.
is the ability to bounce back when you screw stuff up.
I think this may be a hot take, but I think in that moment, like, maybe you are acting like a boy, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, I think what happens, though, is that people take the fact that you acted like you know, I wouldn't like to admit I acted like a child in this situation, but, like,
Sure.
from other people's perspective, probably acted like a little bit of a child, you know? The thing is, for them to say, I'm just acting like a child the rest of my life, or to say, like, this is now what you are, like, there's no forgiveness, you know? There's no canceling the debt of, I feel bad for what I did. I did act like a child. Now can we move past this, you know?
Yeah.
Well, people don't do that anymore.
That's what
the
I'm
thing.
saying,
People
yeah.
don't move past that.
But you can change people's attitudes and minds,
yeah.
which, like, that, it takes grit and it takes time to do that.
It takes toughness.
You gotta earn it.
Yeah.
Right? You gotta earn it, and that takes time and it takes consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we podcasting right now?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
What
we
did-
totally are.
You thought we were just
I thought
talking
this
with
was like
headphones
a
on?
tangent.
I mean,
Like,
laying down
Oh,
hot
sweet! I
takes.
get to hang with the bros and wear headphones. Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think when, because it is always on the top of the list of the toxic masculinity stuff, is like, boys got to be tough, right? But you're not, like, that's the role that has been designed for young men. And where it goes wrong, obviously, like, it's going to be toxic and it's going to be a bad situation.
Yeah.
But when it's done right, it's going to be a huge blessing to everybody around. Why? I don't know. Where does it go wrong when it does go wrong?
What do you mean?
You know what I'm saying? Like, when that, where's the line where toughness is no longer productive and becomes something counterproductive or even harmful?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
When productivity turns into counterproductivity?
Come on now.
How do we know when that point
No,
is?
I'm sorry. That's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, when is it no longer, like, when does it become toxic to be tough? Because there is a point where, like,
Yeah.
Around
I mean,
the
we all know
80s.
somebody. We all know somebody where, like, dude, like, we're on your side. Just chill out. Like, stop being
Well-
so tough.
Well, there
You know?
you go. You just said it's like when it becomes so obvious that yeah, we're gonna do the tough thing, but they keep saying it.
I
They,
think
you
more
know?
so just to like prove that they're tough. Like, just
Right.
like, hey, like,
It's
look,
like, dude,
look
we
what I'm doing.
acknowledge-
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the moment, what happens is that person who's trying to act tough elevates themselves over everybody else in that
Yeah.
situation.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Right?
He's
And
the
so-
toughest of them all.
Yeah, 100%.
Or
And
she.
so when I think in that situation of where you brought up like the Instagram boys versus men, you know, like what happens when you act like a child is you elevate yourself over everybody else in that situation. And you know what real men do is they lower themselves. That's what Jesus did. He washed feet. You know, he let everybody else go in front of him. And so a real man who has toughness allows others to go before them. They're the servant leader, you know. And so when you elevate yourself and put yourself above everybody else, that's when you're acting like a child and you're not tough anymore. And it becomes toxic, you know.
Well, and I mean, I think there's some occasions where you do need to elevate yourself, though. Like in a way, not 100%. But you get what I mean?
I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah.
But you also, I think, you elevate yourself while also understanding you're elevating yourself in the way that you're doing what's good for them. You're
Right,
loving
right.
them. You
I
know?
think the elevating yourself is where we're tripping up here. Like,
Yeah,
it's still not about, like, even your self-love or self-care time or whatever. It's still not about you. It's still about being able to show up in your ministry, show up at work, show up in your family, show
So you
up at
can
church.
love everybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't fulfill my role if I don't take care of myself.
Yeah.
And that's definitely part of the
100%.
yeah.
Word.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
It is a good word.
Yeah.
It is a good word. So, who's the toughest person you know? What do you think? Even if you don't want to share their name, who's
Chuck
the toughest
Norris.
person you know?
No,
Toughness
wait, I
didn't
take it
exist
back.
before
Bruce
Chuck.
Lee.
I don't know, man. Chuck Norris.
See, that's like a
it is a
thing.
It is a
You,
thing.
you gotta watch.
I mean,
Well, that's a
Bruce Lee
debate.
definitely has more skill, but Chuck Norris he might be tougher. He's
Right.
not as good, which makes him tougher. Because
Right.
he doesn't win as easily. I mean, he's a Texas Ranger.
He's hard-headed.
This
He's got hard
okay.
head.
Here's a great. Okay, so there's a.
Say
I
it.
don't know if this is true or not. It's a legend, but there's a legend that goes back in the late 1800s after the Civil War, down in Texas, just after it became a state. There was a massive riot in a small town. It might have been like Arkansas or something like that. Some little small town, and there's a huge riot, and the sheriff can't get the riot under control, so he calls in the Texas Rangers. And back in the day, you got to send a telegram or whatever it is, and it takes time for them to show up. And he's expecting like the Rangers to come rolling in, like 5 or 6 of them on horseback, or like the cavalry showing up. But instead, one Ranger shows up. And as he's walking into town, the sheriff runs up to him and says, like, "They only sent one? Like, we've got a riot going on here. You only sent one Ranger?" And the Ranger looks at him and says, "One riot, one Ranger."
Well, yeah,
right.
That's
exactly.
obvious. You got to conserve your resources.
Exactly. The idea that one man showing up powerfully is enough to bring order into that chaos, right? One man showing up and doing his job, one man who has the ability to make things right is all you need. That's toughness.
Yeah.
What's the toughest man you can think of?
I mean, my dad probably. Just like, so if you guys don't know, my dad's a pastor, and he's done things a little bit differently in his ministry and seen that what needs to get done, and where he sees a need in our community. And I think just the mark of a true tough guy is somebody who goes and does that. And I see him do that and put others in front of himself every single day. And that just over and over again, the long days, the days where it sucks, like he just powers through them. And the Lord's blessed him and blessed our church and stuff. And so, yeah, if I could model anybody, it'd definitely be my dad. So
yeah. Well, an interesting thing about your dad is I don't know him personally.
Yeah.
But knowing what he does, like I guarantee there's some people that look at what he's doing at the church and going, "That's not that's not how we do church."
Bill, yeah.
And the toughness comes in when he's willing to take that risk, right? And even if I'm not saying he's wrong.
Yeah.
But even if he is wrong and does mess it up and does make a mistake, it's that toughness to take on the challenge and be like, all right, I'm the one that's going to rock the boat.
And the flack, too.
Yeah, I'm going to take all that for the sake of the gospel.
Yeah.
And that's why he's able to do such effective ministry is he's willing to take that risk. What do you think? Toughest guy you know?
I would probably have to say my dad as well. So a little bit of backstory. My parents are actually divorced. And so my dad had to go through a lot of stuff, had to resign his call at first. And then he ended up had to work third shift at UPS, a lot of different stuff. But he was doing it all for me and my siblings. And so I thought that was the toughest thing that you could possibly do. And now, because of all the stuff he's had to go through and all the different jobs he's had to have, and now, as you know, he's at Wisco now, teaching and stuff like that. And even at Wisco, he has a lot of tough jobs he's got to do, dealing with a bunch of kids that get in a lot of trouble. And I think he's done a great job at it, and he's persevered a lot. So I think it's really tough of him to kind of go through all this stuff. And
the really impressive thing about your dad is how his friend, he doesn't have a bajillion friends, right? Nope. But the friends he does have, man, they are tight. Yeah. And they would die for him in a heartbeat, right? And the consistently showing up for the people around you, even when your world is imploding. Man, that's toughness.
Yeah, he does that all the time. I mean, he'll put anyone before himself, anyone. Even if it's a student. I remember during the summer, we were doing summer academy at Wisco, and he was like, "Yeah, I know, I got to meet with the student because I got to have him back here next year." Like, just going out of his way just for one student that was probably not going to make it, but the student is still at Wisco and still making it. Yep. So I think that's just awesome.
You keep showing up and showing up and showing up and trusting that the Lord's going to do his work.
Yeah.
Love it. Man, he's a good dude. I miss Whoopi.
Yeah, I know.
I coached with him for a couple of years. He's
a
good guy to be around.
Yeah.
What about you? Toughest guy you know?
So first of all, I feel like this is okay. Like, you had to have expected that we're all going to say our dads. We're not as old as you, man. We don't know other guys.
I thought about saying myself for a second.
Yeah, I am.
I've been waiting for somebody to mention,
Charlie.
Yeah, finally,
the guy who does that.
Someone truly asks me a real question.
There's a reason I'm asking this question, fellas.
Well, but honestly, I'd have to say my dad. I can't think of anybody that's tougher than him. Mm-hmm. Growing up. So I guess the number one thing to know about my dad, the only thing he ever wanted was to have his own family, like have kids and stuff, and be able to raise kids.
He ended up with you. Be tough. Keep going.
No, I'm gonna be tough. Stop a second. Think about smacking you, and then I'm not gonna.
Because you're tough.
Right. Yeah, because I'm tough.
Yeah. That's right. So tough.
No, but like that. I mean, I don't know. Whenever my dad talked, like, he's never had the job that he's wanted because he cares more about having a family than he does about enjoying the job that he has. So, like, when I was in middle school, he got laid off because I don't know if you guys ever heard of the food company Associated Foods. It's a big food distribution company based out of Utah, Salt Lake City, and those Mormons screwed him. No, I'm kidding. It had nothing to do with the Mormons, but they shut down the warehouse that was in our town, and so so he went through a few jobs. It was about 2 years until maybe it was only a year. All I know is that, or remember, was that there was a lot of transitioning. And the thing is, as growing up as a kid, you'd think that you would know that he was going through a hard work time, but we didn't. Looking back, I know that had to have been crazy weird and crazy difficult. Like, there's no way money was working out very well. You know what I mean? But to us kids, we had no idea. We were just going to school. None of that mattered to us. Mm-hmm. And so, honestly, especially since I want to be a dad someday, like, that's crazy awesome. The fact that me and my 3 sisters were able to continue to live our lives the way we wanted to without almost there was almost no cutbacks on the way we lived. Not that we lived luxuriously or anything by any means, but it wasn't like we had to give up stuff, really, while he was going through jobs.
Yeah.
And now he's been working at electrical plant for the past, it must be 7 years now. But yeah, and all the while he's super involved in the church. He's which elder is he? He's, I think he's the worship elder. He's one of the elders, and his big thing, I'm pretty sure or maybe it's the outreach. All I know is that he sits in his office like once a week for 3 hours, just making phone calls to people saying, hey, like people who haven't shown up to church for a while, saying, hey, we really miss you at church. We'd love to see you back.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. It's just growing up under like him being the example of what a man ought to be. Like, obviously, I'd have to say he's the toughest man I know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's nobody else that I know that would be able to handle the situations he's had to handle and that he does handle, especially with me and 2 of my sisters being in the adult world now and having our problems. And we go to him and Mom, of course, and say, Mom, like, Dad, we're freaking out. We don't know how to do this adult stuff. And they have to juggle our problems at the same time.
Yeah.
Well,
and as you guys are talking about your dads and families and things, it just makes me think about how blessed I am, too. That, like, I can't stop thinking of examples of absolute toughness. I actually probably wouldn't say my dad. My dad is incredibly tough.
Sure.
And I love him to death. But I think he would even agree with me that my 2 grandfathers are even tougher. Like
the 2 from his...
so my dad's dad was a police officer in Kenosha after the war. And he ended up being a captain after a while. Didn't want to be a police, so he got drafted into the army. Drove an ambulance in Europe or in England until the Battle of the Bulge. He rotated to the front in the Battle of the Bulge, and then like didn't talk about his wartime experience after that. Like that kind of like he was in it. Came home, just wanted to live a quiet life. And well, first of all, had to leave home at 14 during the Depression because they couldn't feed him. So he had to go live on his own. Eventually ended up in the army, and then when he came home. He lost his job at the American Brass, so then he had to do something. He started driving an ambulance. It ends up being a police captain. Just a life of continual service. Like, what needs to be done? Yeah. Like, I can't do this anymore, so what need is there? And at one point, he was the one who hired the first African-American police officer in Kenosha. At one point, he was heading up, like, a team that was like finding all the illegal gambling sites and things like that, because the Chicago mobs always ended up in Kenosha, right? And like all that kind of stuff. The race riots in Chicago also were happening in Kenosha back in the 60s and 70s, and even like the family situations that he had to deal with. There was a couple of suicides and things like that in the family, where he's the officer that's like responding to the scene and things like that, and you just think about all that toughness to just keep showing up and showing up and showing up. My dad, after my grandpa died, my dad pointed out that there's always, like, to the day he died, there was a bullet that just like one round that he hadn't fired, and he was glad he hadn't fired it, and he kept it on his dresser to remind him, like, to be patient, and like all that kind of stuff, just calling to his own mind one of his failures day after day after day after day after day. That's toughness.
Yeah.
And even after he retired, he would always joke when he was like 85, he retired from retirement, because he again just kept showing up in other people's lives. He was doing stuff at the church, tutoring, working at different volunteer opportunities and things like that, and he eventually got so tired he had to quit doing that, and just totally selfless and self-sacrificing. Mm-hmm. And then my grandpa on the other side, he said,
sure.
I remember going to the shop in the middle of the night, and he's digging around looking for parts, and like I say, you can look at that however you want. It's still toughness. Mm-hmm. Getting the job done, doing what you have to do, and all of that was done for the sake of the family too. Mm-hmm. Just crazy toughness. Think about my great grandpa, like moved out of Chicago and then lost his job as like a caretaker. Ended up working at on the assembly line at the car factory, and just showing up and showing up and showing up.
I think it's crazy with all the stories. Like, I think just the common factor is like the amount of work and the amount of sacrifice that they put in. And like, I think if it was me hearing those stories or seeing those examples for the first time, like, I would immediately say like, oh man, that's a lot of sacrifice. And like, I don't know if I have what it takes within me, but I think for those who are listening, just understanding that when you sacrifice like that, and when you are the church and the person that God's commanded you to be and told you can be, like, there's tremendous blessing for that. And like, you don't live a life just filled with like, you may not have all the money in the world, you may not get everything that you want, but at the same time you have something even better. It's just like this you're who you are and what you want to do align in those moments. You're a servant for those who you love the most, and I think there's nothing more fulfilling. Like, I never realized that as a child, like that this would be a fulfilling career, possibly a pastor, or a called worker, But like, as I get older, it's just like again and again reminded that being tough, like, there's so much fulfillment and happiness within it, because you're being who God has called you to be, So.
Yeah, I like to think of it as like a lifelong body of work, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you think about a lifespan as a body of work, and I get to present it to my Heavenly Father at the end of my life, like that, again, thinking about it that long term, it's hard to give up on something when you have a like. At 28 years old, I'm like in the first third, maybe even the first quarter of not a quarter anymore. That'd be old.
Yeah.
But, like, still in the first third of this lifespan that I have, by God's grace. Yeah. And what am I going to do? Like, I still got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to keep showing up.
Well, and I think something that ought to be said, too, for anybody who's listening or viewing this, it's like, we're telling stories of people who lived, like your grandparents, right? Mm-hmm. Who lived in a time that's so different from ours. That doesn't make like the things that we have to go through any less, you know? Because I think, definitely myself, it's like sometimes I hear the stories that my grandpa tells me about, and it's like, holy buckets, like, you held those guys at gunpoint for how long? I don't know. Stories like that, and it's like, how would you, like, we, in the environment that we live now, can't imagine going through that situation. But the thing is, we have the exact same situations that our grandparents are like, we have no idea how you got through that. Yeah. Especially with the technology that we have right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, there's, like, regardless of what decade or what century or what year it is, what you're doing, if it seems tough, it is tough. And most people are going to acknowledge it for you and be there to support you if you need help. Mm-hmm. It's not like the past toughness was tougher than the present toughness. Mm-hmm. It took the same amount of mental ability, took the same amount of spiritual faithfulness back then that it does now. Mm-hmm. To get through life.
Absolutely. Leaning into the community of believers, leaning into Scripture, letting the Lord guide. That's all we got, man. Ezra, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Ezra Blumer. That's pretty much it.
We'll make sure we put all these links down in the description, too. How can we find you, brother?
On Instagram, Zach.Bloomquist. Twitter is Zach_ Tebow15.
Do you have some good takes on Twitter?
I do not. If you look at my Twitter, it's all Texas Longhorn sports.
Oh.
So if you're
another new coach, another new coach.
I know. So that's about all the tweets that there is. So if you see a Texas basketball or football, it's probably about the coach. So just be alarmed that there's a lot of hot takes on there, and I get very easily angered about what's going on. So just beware. I would suggest probably going to the Instagram and just leaving the Twitter. But your choice, though. Your choice.
All right, Gus, where can we find you?
On Instagram, I'm Gustaviano Wenzo, and then on Facebook, just Gustav Wenz.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
You can find the Gird Up Podcast. Well, me, disguised as the Gird Up Podcast, on Instagram as GirdUp_B_A_man. I know I had my handle wrong for like 3 years.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Are you sure that's the right one?
It is B_A_man.
The letter B?
No, the word B, B-E. I'll include the link down below. Find us on Facebook. Just look up Gird Up Ministries, and there's a community there you can be a part of as well. There's not a ton of content in the community, but we want to build that, and that takes people to be in it too. So I think that's all we got. Go buy a T-shirt. Make sure you follow these guys.
Definitely buy a T-shirt.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
This one,
awesome.
this one, I really like. This is probably my favorite
I like that one a lot.
Although
too.
the Marty one is pretty great too.
Okay.
Flexing.
For me, it goes Marty, that one, and then not that the other one's bad, but
Right.
it's
Well,
just
it's more of a classic, like
yeah.
branded T-shirt. Yeah, but this one, the boys don't learn, men won't know. That's I just want to wear it. I should have bought more XLs just so I could keep more of them. Because I realized I'm gonna need more than one of each to wear.
You need more than one of each so that you make one a cutoff. You make another a crop top, and then you just leave the other one
I need
regular.
more crop tops. My crop top game is weak.
Right?
I know.
I think that most men can say that.
Anyway, go be the man that God created you to be. Have a good one.